This is attempt number 2. Welcome to Tutoring 56. I promised in my intro that I would get within a few days some really simple, basic games for math that's fun to play with, that you can use these big fancy dice that I've talked about, that I love, that are in my class. My high school students like them. My little tiny evening students like them too because they're fun. And what I want to show you before I go any farther is the kind of dice that I use. So one is that stereotypical dice you get in your games. That's all you have to do. If I forget my bag, my students literally go to their games cupboard at their own home and they grab them. Okay, there's another one. This one is got the dots on it. These have the digits. I have no idea where I got the ones with the digits. I really don't. Then the other one, and anyone who's into gaming at all, like Dungeons and Dragons, Catan, etc., you will be used to seeing these kind of things. Okay, they are 10-sided dice. I really, really like them because I push the 10 digits, 0 through 9. I encourage the students not to look at like an 8 or a 7 as, yes, it is a number, but remember that it's a digit, and depending on what column it's in, it could represent something different. So if that little 8 happened to be in the ones column, it would represent 8 individual things. But if it was in the tens column, it would represent 8 groups of 10. Place value for 6 and 7-year-olds can be very confusing because in the ones column, it means one thing, and I put it one column over, it means something completely different. They can read 80 and say, oh, that's 80. But when you say, what's the 8 worth? Then they get a little confused. And they need to understand that for when they go to regrouping and borrowing. Now these guys that go up to 10 are really good up to about my grade 4s. And then my grade 5s get bored with it. And so these I will concede that I sort of hijinks them off of my son who plays Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, and it's a 20-sided dice. Now, on one of the sides of dice, there is a funny little symbol. I am desperately trying to find it. There it is. Oh, okay. I just tell my students it's 20. I also tell them that I borrowed it from my son. My 5s like these because the numbers are bigger. It feels bigger. I like it because it's pushing them up. The other one with this manufacturer, and I got these from Conspiracy Comics. If you go online, you can order them from Conspiracy Comics. But if you are in any fairly large community, Winnipeg, Montreal, Quebec, St. John's, Newfoundland, Buffalo, wherever, you should be able to find a gaming store that you can buy these at. If not, just go online and you can order them. If you don't have access and you're not an Amazon fan, like I'm not an Amazon fan, then the next one is just get some index cards, cut them into about 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, and on one side literally write all the digits. Now, when I do this, because I'm going to be working, they need to pull 2 cards. I need 20 little 2x2s. 2 copies of 0, 2 copies of 2, 2 copies of 3. You got the idea, right? Then what happens is I'm just going to use my dice here. I'm going to roll the dice. It's going to come up with a number. Then they're going to roll the dice again. It's going to come up with a second number, and they're going to add it. Now I'm just going to adjust my camera so that you can see the next. Okay, so you can see that I have literally just have a piece of paper here. As my technology improves, my videos will improve. So you're just going to give yourself a nice little T-chart like this. And you are going to write, I'm just going to say M for mom and S for student or child, whatever. And what they then do, and I'm going to use my smaller dice right now just so you can see what's happening. I'm going to take these 2 dice and I'm simply going to roll it. And they've got a 6 and a 3. Now, if it's the younger students and they're only learning addition or subtraction, focus on one skill at a time and say, okay, 6 plus 3 is And you're going to write that total there. So I got 9. Then your child does the same thing. By the way, it's always the youngest that goes first. It always stops arguments. Or if you have more than one, then I flip it. But that's parenting tricks. You know that. Okay, let's just say the student rolls it and he gets a 6 and a 5, so he has 11. All right, that's first basic simple addition. Now I roll it again. And this time I have a 2 and a 3, so I have 2 plus 3 is 5. I am going to write the 5 there, and I'm going to add the 2 and give 14. Student's going to do the same thing, and we're going to proceed until we get to a predetermined number that you've let the student choose. So if it's a student who's in, say, just learning their addition facts, I might literally tell them to pick a number between 1 and 100. Now, some of my little sneakier ones, students will go, okay, 5. So with knowing the students, I will quite often say it has to be between, that's poorly written, 20 and 100. You know your students. You know what to push or what ends you can push it at. Let the student pick the number. That gives him a little bit of control. With it, when it's an addition, then I would be keeping that number under 100. Just because otherwise the game is going to take too long. And little people aren't made to sit still. They just weren't created that way. They're made to move and have energy. And so we don't want to make the game too long. It's as simple as that. If you want to do something like subtraction, I would do the same thing. And this time I'm going to start that. I have 100 on both sides. You again roll the dice, and is luck of the thing that can luck of the draw there. I get 6 and 3. 6 and 3 is 9. Add those two together, but then take that total and subtract it from that. Okay, so that's going to give me 91. Okay, the student does the same thing, and you're just going to keep going until you get to 0. Whoever gets to 0 first wins. This is an LOL on my behalf because every time I play this game, it's like the student has as much chance of winning as I do, but more times than not, somehow, some way, the student always wins. And honestly, people, very, very rarely, unless I can see a student pushing, getting stressed over, it looks like I'm going to win, then I'll nudge it so that they will win it, because I quite often in the evening am working with students who have little to no confidence, so I want to build that confidence. Next, if you have older students and it's we're on to multiplication, this is when you put these lovely dice away because we only have up to 6 times 6 on this. That's the highest number you can get. And this is when I come up with these dice because now I can roll it and I can get 3 times 0 in this case. I can get 8 times 5. I can get anywhere up to 90, yeah, about 90. If they are rolling a 0 in multiplication, I will tell them that's a 10. If you're doing it with adding, then I said 0. Now, I have some students who are working on getting a little farther, and so they can pick if that's a 0 or it's a 10. And it's literally the same idea. You're going to create a lovely T-chart here. Let me make sure this is low enough so you can see what I'm doing. All right. Allow the student to predetermine what number. Now, in multiplication, I always tell them it has to be at least 100 and somewhere between 100 and 1,000. Don't let them get to be the number too big because otherwise you'll never get the game done. But it's the same idea. You are going to roll the dice, and I have 6 times 1, so they're going to multiply those two together and put that, in my case, on the mom's side. And there's the student side. Do the same thing and just keep going until you get to that predetermined number. It's fun. The kids like it. it's different. Now, with the younger ones, if they're doing adding and subtracting and they've added wrong or not, then simply get them to use counters. Please, no fingers, because it just becomes a really bad habit that's really, really hard to break. Get them to use counters or put little marks and go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and get them to add it together. When it gets to multiplication and they're rolling it, I either get them to count by, okay, so I have 8 times 3 here. I'd go get them to count 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. Count by threes until they get to the number they need. If they're still going to question that, then you can pull out the calculator. I don't like calculators. I teach high school maths. I don't like calculators. I do tell my students to pull them out when it gets to things like what's 26 to the power of 5 kind of thing. Then I do it. When it's getting to my grade 11s and 12s with functions, then yeah, pull out the calculator. Don't want you to spend your whole life adding and subtracting. But that's when it's calculator time. It is not calculator time until you get to those high school maths. Everything should be able to be in your brain. So there is 2 really cute games you can play automatically. With all you need is a piece of paper and some fancy dice or regular dice. And like I said, if you haven't got the fancy 10-sided dice, then literally just, as I said, take a piece of index card, cut out 20 of them, put 0 to 9 on like 1 digit per card, put them in a little bag or something, and they get to pull out 2, multiply the 2 together, and then throw those cards back in the bag. That works really great. And it's cheap. People just use paper in your homes. When I'm working with, excuse the hands here, guys, when I'm working with my older students who they've got multiplication, but now we're to the point where we want to, so maybe they're grade 4 and they're struggling with regrouping in addition. That's when these lovely 20-sided dice come in really handy because they can roll them. Besides the fact that they're really tactile and they're fun to play with. And one of my students just likes to play with them. She just gets her thingies, and that's fine. Okay, so she rolls it, and I'm just going to say I've got a 12 and a 14 here. And so it would be the same idea. But this time, I'm going to do this, and we're going to 12, 14, actually have them on a scrap piece of paper added together to get to 26, and then add it to that list of what to add it together to that final the predetermined number that you're aiming for. This, using these guys with the bigger numbers, is exactly like playing with the little guys, with the little smaller numbers. It's just it's bigger numbers, and it's going to force the students to regroup. Okay? You can do the flip-flop where you roll them, and they take the bigger number, and they subtract the smaller number. All right? We have other tricks for when they're getting into negatives that I will show you. The better, I will show it to you, but it's better on the floor. Okay, so there's a couple ideas just to get you started. If you have any other ideas, they're fun. Those of you who have little people, when you're looking at numbers like this, just start counting everything that goes around the house, but make a game of it. Yes, you are as a parent teaching them to do this, but we don't want them to see it as school. We want them to see it as fun. So a story that comes back to me is years ago, my mother, who also happened to be a teacher, said, "Bev, are you going to teach your kids before they get to school?" And I went, "No, Mom, school is about more than just learning your 1, 2, 3s and your ABCs. It's about social skills. It's about learning to work with people you don't like. It's about meeting all these different cultures, etc., etc." And I was upstairs at my mom's house at the time, and I had my third child, and we were going to go down the stairs. And so I was literally going 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, 4. I didn't think. It was not a planned event. I was just doing. My mother stood at the bottom of the stairs and going, "Right, we're not going to teach them, are we, Bev?" And that was a point. But that's also part of being a mom, is that we want to make it fun. We want to make it so they're learning. Don't plan about it. Just build it into your psychic on how you're going to do it and just have fun. Look, there's 1 crow, 2 crow, 3 crow. Sesame Street and the Count. He counts everything. Same idea. Anyways, that is okay. That's it for today, for this lesson. Have fun. If your student in question is getting frustrated with it, which they may, especially if they're not liking math, which for some obscure reason, kids don't like math. People don't like math. And I'm not sure why. It's just a different language. It just talks about quantities instead of qualitative things. So math is all about quantities. How many books do I have? How many dice do I have? Where languages is more about qualitative, describing things, using adjectives and adverbs to describe things. But for some reason, people don't like math. So my point here is keep it fun. If they don't like it, try a different way. If you have somebody who really likes to cook, get them to start with a certain number of things and saying, we have 10 potatoes for tonight's dinner, and you take 2 and say, I've got 10 and I'm taking 2 and I'm going to put them there. There's lots of ways to do this. So now I only have 8. Now I take 2 more and I'm going to put it in. Now I only have 6. It's that kind of stuff. While I'm here and talking about this, if you're teaching your child or your child is learning multiplication, please, 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 I can't emphasize it enough, do not teach them that it's repeated addition, because it is not repeated addition. I know it's really easy when it's 2 times 3. You're going to go 2 plus 2 plus 2. I know that. I realize that's easy. But they get really confused when they can't do it when it's 1/2 times a quarter, because I can't do repeated addition. So if you start right off at the beginning as you're helping them understand their multiplication, that it's 5 groups of 4 in each group, then it becomes really easy when we get to it's a half a group with a quarter of an apple or a quarter of whatever in each group, because now it's a little more understandable. We can see it. Okay, there you go. There's a couple of games. I will bring in more games as we go. Please leave comments. Leave anything that you're struggling with, that you want a little help with, that your child's struggling with, that you want some direction on where you can go. If you're a high school mom that's just looking for a little extra reinforcement that your child can use, leave the message. I will give you, if you are in Ontario, I'm going to clarify that one. If you're in Ontario, there is a website called jensensmath.ca, and he has every math course that is offered in Ontario, and it has videos with it. It has worksheets on it. It has activities on it. It's really good. In fact, I'm not going to dig it out. I have them all printed off in folders, and I use them with my evening students to reinforce what they're learning in class. So speaking of math, if you're a high school student, if your child's a high school student, there's an idea for you. Anyways, take care. This is Saturday on Thanksgiving weekend. Have a really good Thanksgiving, and take care.